Good evening. Welcome from beautiful Tampa, Florida, home of the world champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tampa Bay Lightning. My name is Bob LeVine. I am the founder and CEO of University Consultants of America. And a big shout out, not only to Tampa Bay, but to our friends in Atlanta, throughout the United States and Asia as well. Good evening and good morning if you're waking up on a Friday morning in Asia. We are going to go over the new stuff. What happened for the class of 2021, what we anticipate for the class of 2022, and we want to be able to answer your questions. So you will see on the bottom, at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A function. There is also a chat function. Please go ahead and ask questions in those places. Don't raise your hand. I can't call on people in this format, but at the end, we will answer your questions so that you can get the best possible information. You might have noticed COVID changed the world, and it changed the admissions world as well. So we're going to start with, what did COVID actually do? Well, in the admissions world, it canceled a bunch of SAT tests and a bunch of ACT tests, and it also hurried, wasn't the only one, only purpose, only cause, but it hurried a test optional thing that made a big difference in how colleges were able to do what they do. Caveat, for those in the class of 2022, we'll probably still see test optional in most cases. That does not necessarily mean test blind. Last year, admissions offices were challenged. There'll be new challenges this year. We want to talk now about what it actually caused. In the admissions world, there were more applications than ever. We're talking about like 40% more on average. Ivy League schools were seeing well over 50,000 people trying to get into less than 2,000 slots. Test optional always does that. What so many schools were going test optional last year, it was a thing. The class of 2021, space by space, had more competition, at least numerically, maybe not qualitatively, but there were. And that created a greater challenge for admissions officers. They had a lot to do. In fact, this year, Ivy Day was a week later. Stanford announced well over a week later. A lot of schools, it just took longer for them to get through things because they couldn't meet at the beginning, because their methods were different without the testing available. But the big one was the bottom. Fewer spots were available. You see, because of COVID, a lot of students from the class of 2020 decided not to start college right away. So they were accepted into schools and accepted places in those schools, but didn't go. They said, we want to defer for you. You might call it a gap year. But they quite literally decided to start a year later, which means they were already placed in the starting class with those who might get into the class of 2021 high school students. So the class of 2021 high school students, there just weren't as many spots. You will see record low selectivity. Yeah, more people, but fewer spots. We were screaming about this for 9 months, and people were still saying, I can't believe how hard it was. It was like 10 and sometimes 20% less opportunity. So that was a big one. And that may continue to be determined. Next up, what did we see? This was dramatic. Now, UCA has a bit of an advantage over other consultancies. Why? We work with a lot of students, so we're able to see trends. And this trend is the one that was most significant. Okay, there were some trends that were less significant, Kids who didn't get good grades had fewer chances. Not worried about that. Our best students, they did really well when they worked really well on their essays. Notice I say essays, plural. We could see that from one school to another, there were different results, even though there was the very same personal statement. Because universities often ask for more essays in their supplements. These supplemental essays can be anything from why do you want to go to our college to say anything you want, or in the case of Wake Forest, give us your top 10 list. Now, nobody is perfect. Nobody writes brilliant essays for every school. There are things that factor in. If you're not feeling well, if you're rushed, if you're anxious, you won't do your best work. Most importantly, from our students, if you don't follow directions, you're not going to do your best work. See, these essays can be very difficult, and the difference between yes and no, plus and minus, can be very slim. It can mean differences in punctuation, differences in sentence structure, differences in content. And so we often went many times over and over, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. When students responded, they did well. So for those schools, those essays that were brilliant, the results were great, really great. But if the essays were just good, the results were not great. So even if you're strong, you have to do good work. Now, there are some causal factors. For example, a prompt works better for you or not, a school fits you better or not. But essentially, it comes down to work caliber. And I can't tell you how many times we yell at students saying, you're disrespecting the school. You're just not trying. You're not doing your best work. And in one case, we told a boy, we will not look at another essay unless you take at least 10 days off. Why? Your work's really starting to suck. He didn't say so, but it did, and he agreed. And then he came back and did it and did great work. And we can tell for the essays that he did the best work, that he really applied himself in an intelligent way. He got in. The other ones, he didn't get in. This isn't earth-shattering to us. We see this all the time. But the caliber of work is what makes the result. Let us understand that an admissions presentation is not necessarily reality. It is a 5-minute, maybe 7-minute read by somebody who doesn't know you at all. So it's only what they see that matters. So in a world that is becoming more and more competitive, the caliber of your work is making all the difference. It just is. And that was obvious in COVID. So there will be some new challenges for the class of 2022. First of all, what I now have in second, your non-academic stuff, non-intellectual, you can call them extracurriculars or service, it doesn't matter. The things you do that are not part of your academic profile. School is closed. That means the resumes of activities that will show up are going to be less robust. But they don't have to be. Right now, we're interacting on the internet. Just because school was closed and just because you couldn't go anywhere doesn't mean you couldn't do anything. So if you're feeling a little bit like, I'm not so sure my resume is strong enough, you might want to contact your UCA client manager and find out how to make that stronger. That's an important part of the application process. So that's a challenge that the 21 class didn't really have because they had pretty much been participating, and then the quarantine started and it didn't affect as much as it affects class of 22. All right, class of 22 also has another problem, testing. Okay, class of 2021 had cancellations and a lot of test optional. Right, For class of 2022, business is open, back to usual. So many people will be able to get great test scores. And some people will choose, because it is the flow of momentum, not to submit test scores because it's test optional. Imagine now if you're the admissions people. Half of your group has test ATs or ACTs, half doesn't. It's going to make it kind of hard to compare apples to oranges. And so in deciding where you send your scores, and please don't do it when you take the test, wait until you know what they are, part of the application, but deciding where to send your scores can be very, very important. A 1450 SAT score may be the type of thing you do send to some schools and not to others. But it's not just SAT and ACT. The subject tests that College Board used to provide still does in Asia for a couple of places, but basically taken out. Well, some people already have good scores, some people don't have any. And more importantly, College Board has figured out and worked with the colleges, well, we'll just use the AP test instead of the SAT2 subject test. If you're in an AP curriculum, great. For the most part, you're learning the material. But what if you're not? What if you're in an IB curriculum, a UK style curriculum, a traditional curriculum? What if you are not prepared to take an AP exam? Because they're longer, they're going to be harder than the subject test. Well, that's an interesting problem. So if anything, the change in testing means that how you present yourself is going to be more strategic between one college you covet and another and another. It's personalized, no one size fits all. And that's one of the things that you guys are facing. It's going to require a bit more expertise than perhaps you're used to. And remember, chat function and the Q&A function will get to your questions. Just a little bit more. How do schools evaluate students and why do some applications succeed? Okay, this is an important. America's best universities do things in a very different way than everybody else. By everybody else, I mean the public universities in the US, schools in the UK, Canada, Australia, mate, China, Brazil. Well, most colleges around the world use a very numbers-based method where higher grades and higher test scores win. But our private schools do not do it that way. It starts from an essence of a different style of education. They try to keep students together because by doing that, y'all teach each other. You're going to see each other a lot more than you see professors. You're going to talk to each other a lot more than you in class. So it's what happens outside the classroom that's so important to be part of the education. And so they look at your contribution outside the classroom. Yes, it has to do with the extracurriculars you do, but it really has more to do with your human side, your personality, because they want an asset, not a problem child. In terms of contribution, they want a catalyst, not a cancer. So what happens in your application is that the evaluation basically breaks you into pieces. They will give you a number for your academics and academic potential. They will give you a number for your extracurricular involvement. They will give you a number for the human side. Harvard calls it personal qualities. Dartmouth calls it character. Where they don't have a separate section, trust me, the human side wins. And this is why the results are always so inconsistent. They're inconsistent because humans can like different things. Not everybody likes country music. I don't particularly like country music. I'm a punk rock kind of guy. But who is your reader? We don't really know. Never really know. If there's one random part of the process, it's that. The process is very subjective. Humans evaluating humans, not computers evaluating numbers. And what's interesting is that when you have these entirely subjective pieces, the answers tend to be all or nothing. A grayscale is yes or no. They either like you or they really don't care. And this is why different schools will look at students in a different way. When you see a school like Stanford, which at present has 9 essays, they used to have 12. 9 out of 9, thank you. 9 essays, at least 2 recommendation letters, a report from your school, and an interview report. That's a lot of subjective pieces. And after they read all of that stuff, test scores aren't really that important. Yeah, you got to be qualified. Check the box. But they need more than that. What happens in the process is a concept known in some circles as reader love. And I've said it many times. Admissions is a lot like dating because you're actually trying to create a relationship. In the essays, they either embrace you or they don't care. So, how does it work? It is very important that what is written by you, by your teachers, by your counselors, you want it to be awesome. Very important. But what does awesome mean? It means what they think is awesome, not what you think is awesome. Remember, they're the buyer. Buyer makes the decision. Buyer always wins. So in this case, our job is not to write a Pulitzer Prize winning poem. It is not to write a perfect essay. The job is not to have perfect grammar. This is not a thing an English teacher should be. The job is to get the very tired admissions person to say yes to you. And there's a lot of technique on how to do that. And that is why when we saw supplemental essays, better ones, well, those students got embraced. Good ones, doesn't work that way. I know you're not exactly going to believe. Ask the kids who worked with the UCA and just finished the process. They know. Admissions to our best universities is definitely not linear. It is subjective. When you do your best work, you have your best shot. And that's not going to happen every time. So to our students, hello out there, UCA students, please pay attention. You're getting newsletters every month, bulletins every month, client-only webinars every month, and personalized service from client managers and our interactive team. Pay attention. Keep an open mind, follow the instructions, and ask us questions. Our job is to inform and train and assist. Look, we're not going to transform you. Our job is to make you transparent and to communicate your human side. So things to avoid on essays, things that are very depressing, things that are expanded resumes. In fact, just today, I finished a student who came to us last week, not getting exactly what she wanted. She was waitlisted at UCLA and rejected at USC. And when we read her UC application and her Common App application, which is where USC was, it read really different. Types of prompts were different. She wrote well. But in the UCLA one, it just felt good. But in the USC one, it felt like she was trying to talk about her achievements. They have the achievements. It's called your grades, your test scores, your resume, your honors. It's on the first part of the application. The second part has another purpose, a totally different purpose. So for those of you who are not familiar with the holistic method, which is most of you, if not all, please understand this is about making a connection. This is about creating a relationship. This is about building a campus community. And the gatekeeper is the admissions person who was assigned to your geographic area. They're the first one. Lots of people will read, but they're the first line of not defense, but acceptance. Here's the deal. They didn't take these jobs with the idea that they're going to kick people to the curb. They don't take these jobs with the idea they're going to reject 95% of people. They took the job to find the 5%. They took the job to create communities. They quite literally love people and love creating groups of people and they want to find you. But it's hard. It's hard for them. It's hard for you. What we try to do is simply give you a fair shot at being transparent. Let them see you. So, in terms of what has not changed with COVID, that hasn't changed. That's always been. But with fewer spots, they have fewer options to take. So the need to get them really to fall in love with you, very important. Always has been. But what we saw are the supplemental essays that parents don't even care about. That made the difference. In fact, one boy from Seoul, Korea, as a matter of fact, except for one university, every school that accepted him had an essay that did not ask why he wanted to go to school. And every school that rejected him had an essay that said, why do you want to go to this school? Except for one, University of Southern California. They had both a why essay and extra essays, and he did brilliant work. You should have seen some of the other stuff. It didn't work. So don't think you can just knock this out. Don't think that there's a formula you can follow. Nope. If there is one rule, it is this. Be you. Sound like you. Converse with them in the communication form that they give you. And please, don't take them for granted. Don't think, oh, I can get in there because my grades are good. Listen, the 3% of people who got into Harvard are not the 3% of the people in your high school class. They're 3% of the people who think they can get into Harvard. It's really hard. It's like making an Olympic team hard. But don't come crying later if you don't try. Don't complain if you don't understand. Our job is to get you there. Our systems work. But I want you to understand that the class of 12th graders, class of 2021, had the hardest admissions year ever with certain challenges that the class of 2022, frankly, will not face. But the class of 2022 has some strategic issues with testing and those resumes. And so it's going to be trickier in a really different way. Class of 2023 at present, you'll probably be good because you guys are now in 10th grade. Everything should be basically back to normal. To the extent you do have questions, now is the time. Please use the chat function, use the Q&A function. If you don't have questions that you want to ask in the group, you're welcome to send us an email. It doesn't cost you anything. info@universitycoa.com. If you want to know more about what we do, info@universitycoa.com. If you want to read more, we can point you to the well over 100 articles we have published. If you want to see and hear more, go to our University Consultants of America YouTube site. We believe in you having information. That's why we're doing this tonight. We want you to do your best because kids, I'm told, to change the world. I want to be part of that. Everybody at UCA wants to be a part of that. We believe in you. We believe in the community. And I got to tell you, this job is an honor and a privilege to help find young people get to the next level. So to the extent that we can help, please let us know. We do have a question in the chat. Are there any high schools in the US that will allow students to graduate in 3 years? And the answer is yes, there are. Graduation tends to be based upon how many credits you get. And to the extent that you take summer school and things like that, people do graduate a little early. However, if you're thinking about going directly from high school into college and going quicker, I don't recommend it because those who are younger tend to struggle in the admissions process. Just not as mature a year earlier, they'll be a year later. They also tend to struggle at the university. So is it possible? Yes. But the different question is it recommended? No, In fact, most American universities love students who wait even longer. They like gap years. Why? Because with more maturity and more worldwide experience, you're going to absorb the classes better because everything fits in context. So it is possible, just not recommended. Next question. I got to run. Can I get a video of this? Yeah, absolutely. Just let us know, info@university.com. We're recording it. Another question, to bring them on. Do most colleges look at weighted or unweighted GPA if it's not specifically noted on the website? Let me rephrase the question. Can you report either weighted or unweighted GPA in your application? And the answer is yes. The better question is, will they evaluate you differently based upon a weighted or unweighted GPA? I tend to think that the unweighted GPA is a more powerful indicator. Why? Because we can tell what it is based on the scale. Remember, they've already seen the classes. If it's IB, they already know if it's high level or standard level. They know an AP class is different than a non-AP class. They can tell. They already have a sense of the rigor. Unfortunately, weighted GPAs vary wildly, particularly for the people who play the games about, I'm going to take a class at the community college and up my GPA because it's got a higher multiplier. Yeah, they know. They absolutely know. So they'll look at whatever you submit and they'll figure it out. But if you're making the choice, and again, this is a strategic decision you make at the time you apply, I tend towards unweighted GPA because they read the academics in like 15 seconds. Honestly, it's like 15 seconds that they use to evaluate all your academic prowess. And the job is to let them know quickly. A couple of points here or there is not going to make a difference. I have another question. Should we submit test scores to test blind colleges? Better question. Are there any test blind colleges? Term difference. Test optional means that you have the choice of submitting or not submitting. There are very, 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 very few, if any, schools that are absolutely, positively test blind. Even the University of California system, which was ordered by a judge to be test blind, appealed it because they want the opportunity to see those scores. They just do. So in response to, should we still submit test scores to test optional colleges? Yes and no. There are over 2,000 universities. They don't all do it the same. And for each student, the answer is going to be different. It's going to be a different result for Stanford as it might be for, I don't know, Colorado School of Mines. Just is. And by the way, CSM is a really good school. It's kind of like, should I apply early versus regular? There's no rule on that either. So if I were recommending things, I guess I am. Understand that every piece of the application is an opportunity to impress them. Why would you give up an opportunity to impress them? If you can get great, perfect test scores, do it. Show it to them. I think I like it. But whether to report a test score, don't decide in advance. Take the test, get your best possible score. Then we can advise you for one college versus another college, whether this one should get it or not, and all the way down. Okay. Listen, I thank you very much for being attentive tonight. Again, if you want to know more, the magic words are on screen, info@universitycoa.com. Thank you very much for your time tonight. I look forward to hearing from you more. Please do not hesitate to reach out. And for those who are going into the admission season, let's do it. Have a great night, and I wish you all the very best. Good night.